from Social Housing Action Campaign, and not actually a Unite activist, but NUJ activist. And I live in a housing co-op, and housing co-ops so far have resisted any attempts at evictions. Housing co-ops largely run themselves, pay off their own mortgages, and it's genuine social housing, and we've no intention of making people homeless because they've been furloughed, they've had a loss of income, and they're not able to pay rent, and rent arrears have risen. If housing co-ops can do that, why cannot the massive housing associations, council housing and private landlords who have enormous amount of wealth? And we would say if there's smaller housing associations which are genuinely struggling financially, then the government should step in and help those organisations, and they should do the same for housing co-ops which are struggling as well. People didn't ask to be furloughed, it was an emergency. Massive job redundancies are now online. Many people have already had a huge cut in wages, and therefore rent arrears are inevitable in this situation. I don't like the phrase rent forgiveness. It's not a question of forgiveness, it's people's right to live in a home, in a secure situation with affordable rent. We should say that the evictions ban continues, but there should be a waiving of those evictions against people who have found themselves in that situation, only because of the COVID lockdown and because of being furloughed or losing their jobs. Yesterday you may have seen in the news the report of the National Housing Federation, which isn't the most radical of bodies, but it pointed out that up to 4 million people are now seeking homes either in the private sector or social housing. If mass evictions take place, and that will be the result of lifting the eviction ban, if mass evictions take place, that number will massively rise. We will have a situation of the greatest need for housing since the 1930s. We'll have mass homelessness, people living in desperate situations. You may have seen yesterday also in the news reports in the BBC, a 59-year-old woman from Yorkshire who was forced to live in a van for the last year. She had a job for a number of years and then was forced out of, lost her job, and then through family dispute found herself homeless. This would not have happened in the 1970s or even in the 1980s. People would have had social housing, they could have got council housing. So overall, the only way to fully resolve this situation is for a programme of mass council house building. That has to be pushed forward, we believe, by all the campaigns. Jeremy Corbyn, when he was leader of the Labour Party, put that forward, the aim of building 100,000 council homes. The National Housing Federation said yesterday that 90,000 homes need to be built every year just to deal with the current crisis. And that crisis is likely to get worse. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of council homes. It's not utopian, even Tory governments did that in the 1950s. It can be done again, it's a question of will. It's a question of will by the national government. It's also a question of will by local councils of all colours and all stripes, who unfortunately have not carried through a programme of building the housing that's needed by working class people. So this struggle against evictions is part of the overall need to transform our housing situation, to build council housing, to extend cooperative housing if that's what people want from council housing and other forms of housing. For those in private rent, to have a cap on rent so they cannot be ripped off eternally by the private landlords. No evictions right across the board. Only that can stop the terrible situation that lies ahead for many people in the next few weeks or months, and overall in resolving this housing crisis. So I thank you all for coming today from the different campaigns, and I'm sure together we can keep the pressure on this Tory government, but also on the opposition, to live up to their manifesto that they had in the last general election, and to fight for council housing on a mass scale right across this country. Thank you.